All right, Steve. Good morning. Happy Sunday to you. We got a great day ahead. Certainly, football, at least. I suppose it remains to be seen with the golf. But thanks for joining me on this Sunday morning, sir.
Well, I think all of the thanks should go to you. It is bright and early out on the West Coast here, and you are being very accommodating to the busy dad life out here over on the East Coast, trying to get everything all done before the big football games and all that comes with being a dad and all the responsibilities that comes with it. But thank you for joining me. I am very honored to have this special crossover inside golf and hold the green mega preview for the Farmers Insurance Open. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, the thought process behind this was and just so everybody knows, I would imagine most people that are tuning into this type of show on a Sunday morning are fully aware that this event starts on Wednesday, uh, which I love generally. Like in terms of why it starts Wednesday, I actually think it's one of the very few smarter things that the PGA Tour does. But running, this little media company of ours where you can call us many things, Steve, but one thing you cannot call us is that we don't give you what you pay for. Like we put out about 11 to 13 pieces of content between a Monday and Wednesday or a Sunday and Wednesday of a golf tournament. So instead of having two Sunday course preview shows, yours with Capper and mine on Sunday morning as well, because you guys were going to even have to go now at the same time as mine. So we would essentially be putting out two Sunday morning preview shows from two podcasts at the network on the exact same time. Thought might as well combine them. Although we are missing Capper this morning. Shout out to Capper being a good dad. We do miss his presence as always. But I think the goal here, Steve, is to give you, a little bit of what I do, a little bit of what you do, go live as well. So it's available for people right away before the football gets started. Um, but I know that you and I do this in a little bit of a different way with a lot of similarities here. So we'll just kind of feed off each other. And where do you want to start with Torrey Pines? This is a golf course and a tournament that I would describe I have a love-hate relationship with.
Yeah, I mean, we here start with high level thoughts about Torrey Pines and maybe the Farmers Insurance Open in general. If you had any Amex thoughts heading into today, we could discuss
Yeah.
that too, or we can just go right into Torrey. I am all ears as far as what you want to discuss to kick
No,
off the
that's
show.
that's a good point. Let's finish up with a little Amex. So we're recording this. If anyone's listening to the pod after, we're recording this on Sunday morning. So you know, kind of the guys at the back of the leaderboard are just starting their Sunday Amex rounds. What do you think, Steve? What were your thoughts on initial impressions on, I think one thing that I think we can collectively viclap here is the new greens mattering. We are seeing a starker difference between the stadium course and the other two courses than we've seen in my recent memory, certainly at least the last 5 to 10 years. I think the stadium course right now is playing around like 0.5 strokes under par compared to the other two courses I think are hovering in the 3.5 zone. So the new greens mattered. We certainly got that one right.
Oh, for sure. And actually, I think what we're seeing this week is a good preview of what to expect the first two rounds next week. We'll get to the scoring at Torrey Pines and the huge difference between the South course and the North course. And, one of the things I kind of took away with how difficult the stadium course was this year was, if you, besides the things that the attributes that we talked about, that was being important there, but, half the tournament still, and that's what made this tournament, I think, difficult was, you still had half the tournament at complete joke setups of Birdie
Yeah.
Fest. And if you really wanted to get a guy in good position for a positional or a win here, they had to nail those too. So it was a really big balance of, okay, who do I want in more difficult conditions where maybe ball striking is going to matter more with some of these firmer greens versus, okay, then you got this putting contest that is going on at the other two venues. And I know, regretfully, I was deciding between Brian Harmon and Sepp Straka at the end of my card, and I came to the conclusion I didn't trust Sepp to be able to take advantage of the 2 putting contest portions of this tournament, and I
Yeah.
off my card, and that's big regret here. But I've liked what I've seen from the stadium course. I also like what they've done to the contours of the green as well.
Yeah.
It also has been added to the difficulty. We've seen guys really have a hard time holding greens. It just with some of the roll offs off the green into some collection areas. We'll see how difficult it plays for the next couple of years. The greens are going to soften a little bit, so
Yeah.
that'll be remaining to see. But I've been enjoying it so far. It has also just emphasized more that I don't really want to see Nicholas and La Quinta at this tournament anymore. I don't see a need. We already have one Pro-Am with Pebble Beach. And if these 2 setups are just going to be complete jokes where 68 is basically it's field average or basically a bad score if you really want somebody to, cash a bet for you, I'm good with it. And they don't show it on the coverage anyways. They only really show like little spots of it. So why even have it? Just have everybody over at Stadium Course, or if you insist on having people at Nicholas, do Thursday, Friday, split up there, and then rest of the weekend Stadium. I'm good with the 3-course rotation here.
Yeah. I think the fact that, this is an event in California that we've had since the 1950s, but we've at least been going to these golf courses, this 3-course rotation since 2016. And they still don't have Shot Tracker at a PGA Tour event in California. I think that collectively shows how they feel about these other 2 golf courses. And they should be replaceable. They should be fairly extraneous expenses for the PGA Tour in terms of their long-term marriage and commitment to La Quinta and the Nicholas tournament course. I know you're not on Twitter, but there was a lot of, not just in the architecture community, and obviously like us talking about the firm greens was a theme for us all week, but people on Twitter really noticed and saw the difference. And really loved the stadium courses here. Like I saw over the course of the week, a lot of pro stadium course tweets, I think largely just based on the fact that it was playing around even par as opposed to -2 under par. And it really made me think about like how far our collective bar, the PGA Tour has just ruined us, because like the stadium course is fine. Like it's kind of a B minus version of TPC Sawgrass. It still has some really weird containment mounding that I think is a little gimmicky, and it doesn't, I don't think it necessarily creates the best version of what Pete Dye can do as an architect. Now, with that being said, like how awesome that we think it is now because it's playing 2 strokes harder than it normally does. Like that should be the bare minimum, is having greens that are firm and correctly test professionals in 2025. And the fact that we're all losing our minds over the stadium course being now like passable, that should be a requirement, is like these golf courses having greens that are actually firm enough to test professional golfers. And I just, the PGA Tour has just like ruined us, because if we are this happy over the stadium course, which we should be, it's warranted. It's a nice change of pace that like, oh, we're actually at a course that plays around even par. I think it just shows how far that we've fallen, man, because these types of greens that they have at the stadium course, deeper bunkers that are actually playing like the bunkers that were originally designed in the 80s, that should literally be the bare minimum for testing professional golfers in 2025.
Oh, of course. And actually, maybe when we talk about farmers in a little bit, I was thinking about it as far as, you mentioned the requirement of having firm conditions. Well, obviously, Mother Nature has to, cooperate, but the PGA Tour also could try and go to these certain venues where at certain times of year it is playing firmer. So, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot a little bit as far as how they set up the schedule,
Yeah.
at these things. But yeah, it is funny how, as soon as the scoring gets tougher, the opinion of a golf course, if it's good or not,
Yeah.
irrespective of just the
Improves.
yeah, it
Yeah.
improves. It's kind of like how we saw last year at PJ National, where they did some modifications and then the scoring got a little easier and everybody lost their mind, kind of ignoring the fact that we'll play it a little softer just because of the conditions. But it's funny how that opinion just flips on a dime but that's basically what we want. We want these guys to struggle and be tested and demonstrate elite skills. And, we're going to come up to a golf course next week that, even though there are definitely some design deficiencies with it, we're at least going to start seeing that stuff of the feeling of watching these guys starting to play big boy golf and actually
Yeah.
have to earn it, and not just these wedge putter fests that we've seen so many times on the PGA Tour over and over and over and over.
Yeah, the approach thing too was tricky. I was thinking about this because I played Sung Jae in DraftKings and it just really murdered me. I played Sung Jae in Finau and it just really killed me on a week where I got the bottom. I'm really pleased with how I did at the bottom, and that's been a theme for me over the first 3 weeks is my choice at the top of the board where I kind of go all in on Xander at the Century, Corey Connors at Sony, and now Sung Jane Finau this week. It's just I'm dead on arrival. Like it doesn't I'm getting the bottom the way that I wanted. I'm getting the amount of players in my 20-man pool through the cut. And I just don't have a chance this week playing 60% Sung Jane, 50% Finau. And so I'm pretty tough on myself, and in the interest of accountability, I spend a lot of time being transparent about the losses and trying to go back and audit and figure out what I got wrong. And I, there isn't a single thing about this golf course in terms of my breakdown that I would have changed, other than the fact that iron play was such a big theme for me. Um, and I really should have at the top thought more about JT over Sung Jae on that theme, right? I mean, if you just look at a very elementary level, we are taking the best approach players. Um, JT has a definitive approach edge over Sung Jae. Now, the problem with that also is one of the things I got right was playing a lot of Cantlay too. And the second you start going with I'm just going to do approach over everything else, then that's going to lead you to the second best approach player in the field, which is Tony Finau. And so, it's kind of like, well, if you go all in on approach, then you almost end up with a JT Finau start. And if you go in the other direction, then you end up with a Sung Jae Cantlay Burn start. And I'm not totally sure which one is better. You know what I mean? So that was kind of one of the things I was struggling with at the top. But one of the things we were talking about in the Discord a lot was, do you think there's some merit to blindly fading the top of the board in the beginning of the season based on the fact that our numbers and our modeling is less sharp than it will be in a couple months? Like in a couple months, our last 36 rounds are all going to be from the last 3 months, last 3 to 4 months. Right now, you're still getting a lot of fall swing data. You're still, depending on how far back you go, you're either getting no data on guys or very minimal data on guys that their 4th or 5th to last round was in August. So just in theory, our numbers and data on these guys are going to be a little bit long-term and less sharp. Do you think there's something there, or am I paralysis by analysis right now?
Well, I mean, to your point of these decisions that we make, I mean, we look at so much data, and look, we've been doing this long enough where just because the data says that this guy is supposed to play well, it's still golf.
Mhm.
And who's to say in another alternate universe that Sungjae just had a bad day? Doesn't mean
Yeah.
you made the wrong decision. Dude just showed up to the golf course and wasn't flushing it. and he got punished on the stadium course. He picked the wrong day to have a bad day.
5.5 strokes lost on approach. That'll throw a real dent in those recent approach numbers.
Right. So, I mean, there's the human element in all this. It's different than football and baseball or any other sport where if you're just handicapping a game, it's binary. It's one team or the other team. This is a list of 130 guys that probably you like 30, 35, 40 of them. And then you have to whittle it down and cut down the field and say, okay, this is where I'm going to go. And you make your stand and you're going to make mistakes. So, trust your process. The fact that you got the, bottom of the board mostly correct. I think that, that means your head's still in the right area. I'm trying to, say the same thing with the decision of Harmon, who's a complete loser, and Sepp Straka. Listen, head's in the right place.
Harmon murdered me too after coring Sepp last week.
I know.
Yeah. There's a lot to it, by the way, because one of the Discord members I was talking about with, in terms of guys that we loved last week that kind of disappointed us and the merit of staying on 1 week in a row, I can just give you 3 off the top of my head. Sepp, Billy Horschel, and Daniel Berger were all 3 guys that I loved at the Sony Open, and I have 0 exposure to this week. And I thought about, because I saw them, there was something in the numbers that I loved last week. And at the end of the day, these golf courses are different, this and Waialae, but not demonstrably so. There's still a lot of similarities in terms of the questions that both golf courses are asking. And I have 0 exposure to Berger, Sepp, and Billy.
Billy, yeah.
0 exposure after they were 3 of my highest owned guys last week.
None. It happens. I mean, there's a psychological effect of these people hurt you last week. And are you going to just accept that? Were you right about last week? They said a bad week and go back to them this week and trust what your gut is, or, are you going to pivot off it? And, it works your way in your favor. Sometimes works your way not in your favor. Sometimes that's the difficult part of the sport. But as far as like what you said about fading the top of the board early in the season, I think there is some merit. Obviously if you look at long-term stats, you do have to keep in mind that you have a giant gap between September and December, where basically these guys are playing no golf. So your 50 rounds, 75 rounds is pretty much going back to like May, June. Like sometimes at some point that, because of, especially with how these guys are, like these guys can go to a range, and if they're having a swing flaw, get a coach looking like, yeah, you're doing this, and then they just turn around like that. So the longer you go out with that, the less relevant that data is. But I also think too, and this is just the vibe I've gotten at the difference at the signature events and just these lower non-elevated events is it just feels way more sleepy. It feels like these top guys are just there for sponsors, or it doesn't feel like there's a lot of pop in it. And maybe that is why I feel like at some of the non-elevated events, they've seen a lot more chaos, as opposed to about 2 years ago, where it seemed like just top of the board were just hitting every single week. It didn't matter what event it was. It could have been Byron Nelson, or it could have been Bay Hill. Like it was basically, you were living 50 to 141 and below. Yeah. And it just feels like ever since they've done this and basically create 2 different leagues with the PGA Tour, it just doesn't feel like, I mean, you can't measure motivation with some of these guys. It just does not feel like there's a lot of pop and energy. And maybe that's why it's been a little sleepy. And maybe that's why some of these guys, like you maybe see like a Sung Jae or Tom Kim, you have one bad round, they kind of just sleepwalk the rest of the tournament. So, and maybe it's a combination of both those things that we have to start maybe thinking about a little more.
It's not a big enough sample size. I'm trying not to overreact, but I think it's enough of something for me to monitor and think about. So let's transition into Torrey Pines and see if we want to roll with the same overhanging ethos this week in terms of approaching the top of the board with a little bit of skepticism. Because I feel good about this one, man. I go to this event every year. I've been 4 years in a row now. Like I said at the top of this podcast, I would say that I have a love-hate relationship to Torrey Pines. I think that it is architectural malpractice. I think it is the worst golf course in America on the best piece of land. I think that it is a disservice to one of the finest cities in America in San Diego. And I think that it is the worst, most highly exaggerated version of homogeneity and strategic design. I think it is a byproduct of the darkest, most uncreative era of golf course architecture. I think it is a byproduct of the architect that may have single handedly done more harm to the ethos of strategic golf course design than Reese Jones. I think the golf course has one of the worst routings in the United States of America in terms of its relationship to the coastline and how it interacts with one of the most beautiful pieces of property, again, in the United States of America. And yet, I go to this event every year. I love betting it. I love watching it. I love watching golf at it. And I've had a lot of success at it over the years. I had a big single entry sweat, $100 single entry sweat last year. And I was that psycho on Sunday morning, living and dying with every Nick Hardy shot. It was basically just me and his girlfriend out there on Sunday morning trying to pray that Nick Hardy could move from T47 to like T22 3 hours before the leaders teed off. So that's my spiel on Torrey. What's your relationship to this event?
Well, I mean, look, I, like you, have spent years just talking about the place and all of its deficiencies and going after Reese Jones. And I've come to a point, and maybe just because I've gotten older and had kids, and you get that hashtag perspective, and that there are just some things you can't control. There's some things you can't fix. And while I can get on this microphone and try and promote wholesale changes to Torrey Pines and how we should widen it and rip it up and renovate it, fact of the matter is it's a municipal golf course owned by the city of San Diego. And the people you have to convince to do that are city board members who have to answer to taxpayers. It's not a country club where you can, convince the membership who know golf that say, hey, this is good for your golf course to make it this way. They're looking at it of, well, this place prints money, and why should I commit $15-20 million of taxpayer money to fix it that where it really wouldn't drive revenue? So it's not changing. And I've just kind of given up that this is just what it is. And honestly, if you just really want to go back, and you kind of mentioned too, the darkest area of golf course design. Look, the USGA wanted to make this place US Open tournament ready. And they gave a directive to Reese Jones, who is very good at this type of setup. We want it long with thick rough, narrow fairways, difficult greens. Mission accomplished. He did exactly what he was asked. He
understood the assignment for sure.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
They picked the perfect guy for it. So yeah. I think for me, and I've been watching PGA Tour golf for a long time. I've been covering this for a long time. And I remember when this event felt like the kickoff to the golf season. And it was mostly because of Tiger. Tiger would make his debut here. And of all, he dominated here. And I know that is what's driven, I feel like, a lot of the mainstream appeal to this place, because everybody thinks of Tiger dominating this tournament. The US Open wins there, past major championships.
Yeah.
And because of the new schedule structure of the PGA Tour, where certain events are deemed more important than others, I feel like, and I could really feel this last year with just how that leaderboard shook out, and maybe it's just a one-time thing, but it just feels like this event now is just put in there as almost just like an inconvenience to the rest of the schedule. It has to be in there, but we got to jam it between all these important events. And I think I just feel like it's lost a lot of its luster and pop.
It has.
This used to be where everybody would show up. You would get DJ and all those guys went to live, but like basically all the best players would show up.
Rahm had his dominance here, and even this year, Patrick Cantlay and Justin Thomas not playing because they have an Atlanta Drive match on Tuesday. Like, I'm not saying the reason that they're not playing Torrey Pines this year is because of TGL, but if you have a Tuesday night match in Jupiter, of course you're not hopping on a plane to go play Torrey Pines on Thursday. And yeah, Kyle, Xander's hurt right now. Um, the injury is not serious to my understanding, but it's enough of an injury that he's going to say, hey, for this purse and whatever, in terms of my risk tolerance, this is not worth it for me. And it's his hometown event. Xander's from San Diego. It lost Phil too. Phil's from San Diego. Phil played this event every single year for 20 years. Same with Tiger, obviously, as you mentioned.
Mhm. Yeah, it just feels like, and we're going to go over what this golf course tests. It feels like this should be, even though we don't like the golf course, it should have the best players on it. We should be able to
Yeah.
see everybody on here getting tested and struggle and actually get punched in the mouth a little bit this place. That's, I think, really, we want to see these guys tested. And the fact that, and I don't even know I thought a couple years ago when they started all this, that they were going to rotate where the signature events was. And apparently that just doesn't matter. And now you
No.
have these events like Farmers and even Cognizant, the old Honda Classic, that just are afterthoughts now.
Yeah.
Because the PG Tour wants to stay with the status quo. They don't want to change anything. And I feel like it's a shame at this point where, yes, it's a very top field. There's some good names in this field. For the golf sickos, there's a lot of really good names. But when Taylor Pendrith is basically your 10th best player in the field, like, that's not a good thing. And I feel like they're missing a big opportunity because there's very few golf courses that appeal and trend and can cross into the mainstream. And I feel like this is one of them where, like, my casual golf friends, they know what Torrey Pines is. They know everything about it. And it's a lost opportunity to not try and showcase it and actually force these guys to show up and elevate this event. And that's why we're going to see probably Farmers. This is the last year they're a sponsor event. They realize what's happening and they're getting out of Dodge. It's a shame.
Yeah. I mean, it was big time felt in the media center last year. Like, I remember being there with, you have all these old school San Diego local journalists. And like I said, I felt it on the grounds last year. It was dead on Wednesday and Thursday, which is understandable of a work week. But all the media members that have been covering this event for 20 years are like, now you're telling me I got to write about something called a Matthew Pavone? Like, this used to be, I used to come here to write about Tiger. So there has been a bit of a fall from grace, also in the sense that, in my opinion, there are 5 golf courses that I would call like the big 5 in terms of every single year we go there. We have a lot of history at these places, and they have some stylistic and agronomic differences. But for the most part, the defining ethos of these courses is that depending on weather, they are the 5 toughest, longest, most difficult courses on the PGA Tour. And they generally, in some way, shape, or form, to varying degrees, essentially just test distance, total driving, and long iron play, right? And those big 5 are Torrey Pines, Quail Hollow, Riviera, Bay Hill, and Muirfield Village, right? Those are kind of the big 5. I call it, and I have my rankings for the big 5, like the long and difficult PGA Tour specialists. And Torrey Pines is the only one of those golf courses that is no longer signature. It's the only one of those events with what I would call a big boy golf course. Say what you want about Torrey Pines, it's 7,600 yards, and you have thicker, colder air in San Diego. So it's tough. It's generally won around 13 under par. Now, we got softer conditions last year. I remember last year it was really wet, like wet to the point where walking on the grounds, my shoes were soaked. So talk us through, and if you want to pull up a visual component too, I'm gonna go and grab another water bottle real quick. So talk us into start us going with the specs of the golf course.
Okay.
How you would break it down, agronomy, all that stuff. And then I'll add my piece and we'll go back and forth on the model. But
Sure.
dive in there for us. I'll be right back.
That's actually a good way. So I'm going to go over just the general high level like GCSAA stuff. And there's a couple of comments I can make there a little bit that are not on the GCSA. So, as we talked about here, we're going to start with the South course first. This is a William P. Bell and William F. Bell design. Other places you've seen Bell works. He worked with George Thomas at Riviera and LACC. Also, for an original design, he did Bermuda Dunes Country Club, which was part of the Bob Hope Desert Classic, which is what we're watching this week, the Amex. But we don't see any Bell, golf courses on the PGA Tour. But it isn't really a Bell golf course anymore because, as we have alluded to, in 2001, Reese Jones was given the directive by the USGA to come in and make it suitable for the 2008 US Open. And as we describe, it's lengthened and narrowed and added a bunch of fairway bunkers just to make it very tough and suitable for that play. In 2019, he came back to make adjustments to the golf course ahead of the 2021 US Open. He put some new tee boxes in. What he also did too was he put the fairway bunkers a little closer to the fairways and eliminated the rough there, so balls would have a little easier time if they're a little offline falling into the bunkers there. So that was the biggest changes he made there. As far as length, obviously, as we mentioned, almost 7,800 yards, par 72. The key difference between this setup and what you saw at the 2021 US Open was hole number 6. It's par 5. It's pretty easy par 5 for these guys at this golf course. I think it's the easiest one on there for them. But it was a par 4 for the US Open. Average green side, 5,000 square feet, a little smaller than PGA Tour average. Average fairway width, 24 to 27 yards wide, very narrow. We've watched this tournament for years. The golf course, it's long, narrow, thick rough. One of the things that, they talk about sometimes about this place is Kikuyu. Well, at this time of year, though, it's similar to the Bermuda. It's overseeded at this time of year. So it's ryegrass overseed, rough 4 inches, really thick rough there. And the greens, the Poana greens, the West Coast stuff. We'll talk a lot about putting on this show. I got all the putting data as well with it. And we'll go back and forth as far as what you really want to focus on for targeting guys at this, on this particular surface. So, but we also have the North course. So 3 rounds are at the South course. 1 round is at the North course here. Again, these are William Bell designs, but in 2016, Tom Weisskopf came in to redo some of the golf course there. They removed dozens of trees because there was a beetle infestation. They removed some fairway bunkers, enlarged some greens. They also flipped the 9s too to make it where you're playing more towards the coast on the back 9 as opposed to the front 9 there. Some other Weisskopf golf course we see the PGA Tour, TPC Scottsdale, TPC Craig Ranch, a lot shorter, only about 7,300 yards, but it's deceptively longer that we'll talk about in a little bit as far as what proximity buckets you want to look for. Par 72, average green size 6,000 square feet, a little bigger than the South course. Still narrow fairways though, 24, 27 yards wide. And the same agronomy with one caveat though, is the greens up at the North course are bent grass, but I'm going to throw some caution on that. Yeah. Is if you watch the ESPN PGA Tour live and you look at the North greens, they're multicolored. And what I'm watching there is you have some bent grass in it, but there is definitely
POA invasion.
Yes. Yeah. And if you are not maintaining that golf course properly, you're going to get POA in the greens. And so at this point, as the years go on, these are less and less bent greens. They're more of a bent POA mix. And probably, if we play this enough times, it's probably just going to become POA at some point. So it says it's bent grass. It's not really bent grass anymore. But let's get to scoring, like you just mentioned, though. So one of the tougher setups plays over par every single year since 2020. A little bit more difficult certain times a year. There were some weather issues in 2023 and 2021. There was also, played a little easier in 2024, 2022, and 2020. A little softer conditions, as you mentioned, but still plays over par. Kind of what you said, though, the PGA Tour has kind of ruined us, where even though it's barely over par, it's one of the top 10 most difficult scoring golf courses in the PGA Tour. But you can see, though, with the North course, though, very easy, especially the last couple of years. In 2023, that was where there was some weather issues there. I think it was on Friday.
If you're playing Showdown, it's not even an argument. Just do not play guys on the South Course if you're playing Showdown. Just
Yeah.
don't even think about it.
But the one thing I think to consider though is, and I've gone back and forth on this. So Thursday, Friday, when you're constructing a DraftKings lineup or a betting card, obviously guys started the South Course on Thursday and played North on Friday. Well, in the days when there's bad weather, and only one of the days, and I'll ask your opinion on this. Where do you want to start? Would you rather guys play the North Course in really difficult conditions, or would you rather them play the South Course in really difficult conditions, and then one of the other days is just really easy?
North Course in difficult conditions. I'll tell you why, because Torrey is one of the, and you really have to go to this event many years in a row to pick up on this. I was talking to Joseph Almani about this last year, but one of the things that's really interesting about Torrey is there's certain stretches of holes at Torrey, like those holes on the front nine that are down closer to the coast, I don't know, 2 through 7-ish. I think 2 through 7 or 8-ish that are closer down to the coast, where when it's really blowing, when you're playing that stretch of holes in the wind, it's by far the hardest aspect of the golf course. And that's when Torrey Pines can really start to show true carnage, right? Is if you got wind at Torrey Pines South. Okay, so I'm always probably going to choose the tougher conditions on the easier golf course because I think things can get so blown out of proportion where you could just ruin your tournament in a 3-hole stretch if you're playing the coastal holes in extreme wind. That would be my personal opinion.
Okay. I think I go slightly different direction, but I think what you just argued is perfectly reasonable too. And it's probably a case by case basis, but I think I remember that 2021 year where Patrick Reed on Thursday, it was really easy conditions and he fired like a 64 or something, 60, like something really low. And you can do that on this golf course. And then he went over to really difficult conditions on Friday. And it's tough for everybody on the South Course. Yeah. So it's hard to separate. Like, if let's say you shoot 75 on the South, like that's basically field average. You're not really killing yourself. Mm-hmm. And the North Course guys, because they played the South the previous day, and you can still really screw it up even in good conditions, like you then can't catch up on North Course at that point. So I think it's definitely a case by case basis. I think I would rather take the chance of getting guys on North and get out to a really good start and then just hoping in worse weather that they can kind of keep it together on South, because in really bad conditions, I've seen it a lot. Like you just can't score over there. And when the wind is blowing, it's rainy. The birdie opportunity is just not there as much. But it's a case by case basis. What you laid out is perfectly reasonable. It's probably can't be proven out in general. It's probably just a personal preference at that point, as far as where you would want to go with that.
So before we finish up with talking about our models and early leans, one thing I've been trying to focus on these Sunday DFS shows, or Sunday previews, I should say, for Inside Golf Podcast at least, we are still getting a lot of beginner DFS players now in the Discord. And, obviously we have our base of like our super sharp in the weeds players that are going to listen to us every single week. But I think one thing I'm trying to focus on is after, I densely describe a golf course in the most in-depth way possible for 45 minutes to an hour, what's like the big takeaway though? Like if you're just going macro, zoom out, elementary level, if you were focusing on one theme of the week at Torrey Pines, like we talked about the firmer greens last week at Amex and how you can build a narrative around that being your theme. What is it for you this week at Torrey?
Well, I think this is probably a good transition to the strokes gain. Like this is more in the weed stuff, but you can probably take away from, I know it's 3 central themes when looking at just its overall difficulty relative to other PGA Tour venues. Difficult tee shots from the standpoint of, even though everything's really right on front of you, it's narrow, difficult to hit fairways, and you got bunkers pretty close to the fairways there too. So it's difficult tee shots, long iron play, and then you see this if you're watching YouTube. This is shaded like beige. It is one of the most difficult golf courses to putt on.
It's the hardest golf course to putt on inside 15 feet, I would say. This in Pebble Beach and Riviera.
Yeah, and it's all about with the POA there. So I think if I had to rank it, just because of the types of guys who have won this over and over and over, it's been guys who are really good with the long irons.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's probably priority number one for me. Number two would be probably distance, I would say, especially when, in bad weather and it's colder as well. The ball's not flying as far on the South course. And then third is probably the ability to putt on West Coast POA. And just picking a guy who is a good putter in general does not mean that he's good on this West Coast stuff, because it is bumpy. It's inconsistent. I think I liked how you put it in a couple of previews over the years, talking about putting on the West Coast is you have to have confidence putting on this surface. I love how you put that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about experience at that point. And I know there's one guy you're really high on in your model this week that we'll get to in a little bit that is just a terrible putter. Awful, horrific. But he's not that bad over on POA.
You taking shots already at Joey Brams?
I mean, we'll get to how high he is in your model in a little bit, but I can defend it when we talk about him. But that is an example too, where it takes some more context to figure out who's been good really on just these types of surfaces, because just saying, okay, I'm going to take the best putters in the field, sometimes that works out for you, but sometimes it doesn't. And you might also miss on some guys that might not be as good in the strokes gained putting stats, but just putt so well on the surface that and there really is some experience you really need to have. And so you have to have patience. You have to just accept that, the ball, because the POA buds certain ways, it just is not going to go your way, and just accept it and move on. So I think those are the three major things for me that I look at every single year at Torrey Pines handicap instrument. It just seems like every single year it comes down to those three skill sets over and over and over. And that speaks to kind of the homogeny of this golf course and just this tournament over and over. What about you?
I think I'm with you. I'm pretty aligned. I think a lot of people are going to tout short game this week, and I'm not anti the importance of short game at Torrey Pines by any means. I still have it fourth, I would say, probably in terms of mid to long iron play. I'm putting number one. I mean, you have over 75% of approach shots coming from over 150 yards. This is one of the most pure, extreme examples of a mid to long iron test of the 10 par fours at Torrey Pines. One of them measures under 430 yards. Distance, and I think, total driving with probably a 70% split on distance over accuracy. I just think that if you are a bad driver of the ball, you are putting yourself so far behind the 8 ball. And last year, under softer conditions, when the rough was a little bit more thick and lush, the golf course overall played easier because you had more receptive greens and a little bit higher of a greens in regulation percentage. But you look at that leaderboard last year, Steve, Nikolai Hoshgard, Jaeger, Knapp, Finau, Kevin Yu, Patrick Rogers, Xander, Pendrith, Ludvig. 9 of the top 12 players ranked top 25 in the field in driving distance last year. Only Xander and Nate Lashley, who I played, by the way, that's a Vic, ranked in the top 25 in accuracy, but 9 of them. So triple of the top 12 players last year, you'd 3x the amount of long driving correlation than you did accurate driving correlation, which is a big deal. POA, obviously, I agree in terms of Torrey Pines does not get thought of as a golf course where you want to look at putting because it's such a demanding test from tee to green. And, you have these examples of Luke List and Zalatoris where it almost gets a little bit of the Augusta narrative where it's like, okay, we can acknowledge the greens are so hard, but maybe then it just becomes a wash and even the best putters lose their advantage. I do not believe that is the case at Torrey Pines personally. Like for every single example that you can find at Torrey Pines of a bad putter like Luke Less or Will Zalatoris just figuring out, there are 10 more examples of elite players with experience on POA rising to the occasion on this golf course. Like Max Homa is probably the best POA putter in the world, statistically at least. Jason Day, Justin Rose, like Jason Day and Justin Rose, two of the strongest course history guys at Torrey Pines over the last decade, are two examples of like the best POA putters of the last 25 years. Like they've played great at Riviera, they played great at Pebble Beach. Like if you have confidence on these greens, it's a huge, huge advantage. So it's one of the few golf courses with so low of a greens in regulation percentage where I'm really highlighting putting from 5 to 15 feet because that make percentage is so much lower on average than the average PGA Tour event. And the only thing that I would say is a reason why short game needs to be in the mix there as well is because the expected value of a tap in at Torrey Pines is so much higher than the average PGA Tour course. There's a huge advantage over the course of 72 holes to be able to chip it to tap in range. Okay. Now, the reason for that is basically just a math equation. Okay. So the make percentage from 4 to 8 feet at Torrey Pines is 7 percentage points lower than the average PGA Tour event. Okay. So just on average over the course of 72 holes, the average PGA Tour player is going to miss far more 4 to 8 footers at Torrey Pines than they would on an average golf course. Okay. And so when you're chipping it to 2 feet instead of 4 feet, that is more expected value at Torrey Pines than any other golf course on the PGA Tour. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. I think the only, well, I mean, we'll get to it in a little bit, but most of these greens have a lot of thick rough around it. And, if you drop a ball,
the degree of difficulty is not that high, but I'm just saying like the difference between chipping it to 2 feet and 4 feet this week is more exaggerated than nearly any other golf course on tour in terms of the expected value of a tap in.
Sure. I mean, I wasn't going for difficulty. I was more going for it's kind of a luck box. Sometimes when you just drop a ball from an approach shot distance into the rough, who the hell knows? Like at that point, like it's kind of like how we talk about Hovland's really good at Murfield Village or even this place, where when you're chipping out a thick rough, it's kind of guesswork how it's going to come out. And yeah, there has to be a little bit of finesse with it. But like, if you have a horrible lie, like it doesn't matter if you're Jason Day, like you're not going to have a good chip shot at this point. So, I feel like, with around the green play, yes, it's the high, miss green percentage, but a lot of it around the green, especially if you're in the rough, like it just comes down to like, how'd you lie? Like, you could just have a guy have bad luck. Like I'd rather be coming out of a bunker at this place because at least I know it's consistent. Yeah. And I'm going to, not have a terrible lie in it, but I agree with you. In tournament around the green performance, like which you can't really guess sometimes because there is a little bit of luck depending on just how if you're spending a lot of time in the rough around the green there, who knows? Yeah, there is definitely a value in getting it to a foot from the hole because as we'll talk about in a little bit, with the putting under 5 feet and 15 feet, you're not making a whole lot.
So. Okay, let's is there anything else you want to talk about the golf course before we do modeling?
Yeah, we'll zoom ahead. I want to talk about the North Course a little bit because I feel like we just ignore it a lot as far as, there's three, we spend so much time and data with the South Course that really the only place to kind of talk about with the North Course other than scoring. And I think this reinforces the need to really look at long iron this week is actually the estimated proximity buckets on the North Course. So basically what I did was, and if you haven't looked overhead as far as the layout of the North Course, it basically just looks like a mini version of the South Course. Everything really is right out in front of you. A lot of dead straight holes, very narrow. It's just a little shorter. So you would think it'd be more of a short iron test, but what makes it more deceptive is I think all the par threes at the North Course are over 200 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So that automatically pushes out your proximity buckets. You have the 4 par fives that are going to be over 225. So now all of a sudden, when you do like a composite average of 3 rounds of South Course and 1 round in North Course, you now had 70% of your shots over 150. And a lot of that has to do with the North Course having all these par threes basically from 200 to 225. So, and we talked about earlier, kind of like with Amex, you really want a guy to cash a positional for you, get a win. Like, it's tough to make up shots on the South Course over the weekend. Xander has done it before. There was years where he was terrible on the North Course for whatever reason, but a big way to help you is to take advantage of that North Course, and you got to hit a lot of long iron shots over there too. So it definitely helps. It reinforces to me the need to make long iron play paramount this week.
Number
because
one.
you do it over and over on the South Course.
Yeah.
And you have to do it more often than you think on the North Course.
Yeah.
So
all right, we'll take a quick break for our podcast listeners. And then let's do model. Okay, we are back. Start us off here, Steve.
Okay. Well, this is your model.
Do you want to do me first?
Well, so I put a composite model.
Interesting.
I didn't. So if you want to see my top 20 model, you can go to the Discord. That's where we're chopping shop there, sweating bets. So become an insider today. You won't regret it. It's been great being a part of that community.
Certainly won't regret it.
No, you won't. It's been excellent. I've been very happy. I've been in companies with a golf Discord before. This completely blows it out of the water. It's great to do that. But you'll also find my betting card on there because I'm not on Twitter. And you'll also find my model there. So if you want to go see my top 20, not only can you find it on Discord, but you can find it on the Expert Create and Bets Pursuit. But you're all here for Andy's stuff. So this is Andy's top 20. So Andy, why don't you take it away? This is your top 20 for the farmers. Your first run through. Go right ahead.
Well, I think at the top, there's not a lot of surprises until you get to number 6. Okay. Sung Jae was number 1 last week as well. I'm going to rerun things after the Amex round. I have some skepticism that he will maybe stay in the number 1 spot after a -5.5 approach round, but I don't think he'll fall too far. I think that Sung Jae is a surprisingly very strong fit on long and difficult golf courses, when I think a lot of people think that Sung Jae might be pigeonholed to birdie fest. But, for every Shriners win you have in there for Sung Jae, you also have a Arnold Palmer Invitational win. He's been good at the Memorial. He's been really good at Quail Hollow, by the way, as well. He finished top 5 at Quail Hollow last year, and he has 2 top 6 finishes at Torrey Pines.
Can I say one thing? I'll say 2 things about Sung Jae.
Yeah.
First is, if there was one knock,
are you willing to go back there this week? Right. Because I think there's 2 guys in the top 4 that really murdered me this past week that I think are pretty bulletproof fits at Torrey Pines in terms of Sung Jae and Tony. And one of the things we talked about at the top of the show was hanging on for one more week, right? When there's a reason in your numbers why you like this player, one golf tournament is far too small of a sample size to overreact to all of the reasons why you like the player, a la Billy, Sepp, Daniel Berger at the Amex, right?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll give you a pro case and the con case for going back to Sung Jae. Pro case is the one thing I noticed last week, and we talked about it on our show, on the betting show, that his splits of performance over the last 12 months from under 150 and over 150 were pretty stark. He was actually pretty bad from under 150. And that was kind of a red flag, especially at some of the, and I estimated the proximity buckets of La Quinta and Nicholas course. A lot of, short irons there. You get a little higher volume at the stadium course as well. That was a little concerning, but part of that might be there was some really bad data from the last 12 months, like really bad iron. It probably is something to do with that, but it was noticeable. He was not very good from under 150. His over 150 stuff is pretty good. And that I think is probably why he's back up the top of your model, even though overcoming the, fact he doesn't have a lot of pop off the tee. If you're really emphasizing long iron play, his numbers over the last 12 months have been really good. So this might be an opportunity to go back to him. The con case is that we talk about on our show. Sungjae is a knucklehead, and he's going to screw you when you least expect it, even if it looks really good on paper. So it might come down to a personal preference if you really want to go back to him, if you think he's not going to hurt you this week. But from a paper perspective, he's been good here. And he's much better from longer irons over last year than he's been from shorter irons. And we're going to see a heavier volume this year with it. I can see a world where we go back to him. I don't think he's going to be priced that way. I think he's still going to be, 20 to 1 or so in the betting markets.
25 to 1. Yeah. I think he is still going to open lower than Finau.
Mm-hmm. Probably.
Would you, just in a vacuum, let's say if Sungjae's 22 to 1 next week and Finau's 30 to 1 next week, what's the better bet?
Oh man,
I still think Finau. Finau's been unbelievable at Torrey Pines, like unbelievable at Torrey Pines.
I think I would agree. I'm not going to take much stock into what happened at Amex. I feel like with him,
he made a lot of birdies.
He did
at Amex. Finau made a lot of birdies at Amex. He obviously shot +2 at the stadium course in the final round to miss the cut on the number, or miss the cut by 2. So he shot 9 under at the other 2 easier golf courses. And I think he does have that token Torrey Pines skill set where Finau actually has a really good short game. He has a lot of pop off the tee. He's not been driving the ball well, but one of the things about Torrey Pines is big messes are fairly penalized equally to short misses. So like with Finau, if you're missing by 30 yards far down, you're not going to be blocked out by trees at Torrey by any means. Like I think it's a very good driving golf course for Finau, and he's got a really underrated short game too. It's just the putt, he's putted well at Torrey Pines, but he's not a good putter.
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to gaslight people too, he's got the bum leg, and we've already seen Tiger Woods with a bum leg win at Torrey Pines. Why can't Tony Finau, That's the cherry on top of the argument right there. That's stuff that your model doesn't have right there. Strokes gained, broken legs at Torrey Pines. Okay. So
seriously.
Yeah. Keep playing him. So yeah, I think I would go back to, I'm more interested, let's put it this way. I'm more interested in positional market with those two. And because I just, kind of what we talked about earlier with some of these sleepy, non-elevated events. And I bet Tony last year at this event too. And I was just waiting for him. I saw the guys have were like, these guys are all chokers. And I think Tony's probably going to win on something. And he just kind of flatlined. I feel like just with those two, it's probably positional market for me. But I think Sungjae or Finau, I probably would close my eyes and go back to Finau and hope that what we saw this week, maybe I get a little bit of a discount in the betting market.
So that kind of brings us to Hideki, and I'm just going to talk about like the top 6 and then we'll get to yours and compare and contrast. But Hideki, Ludvig, Collin. Okay. I feel better about these 3 than I do about Sungjae and Finau, just in terms of the context of recent form, right? Ludvig had a great start to the season at the Century. Collin had a great start to the season at the Century, although I will say Collin Morikawa missed the cut last year at Torrey Pines as overwhelming chalk. And I remember that was actually a huge asset to me in one of the best DFS weeks I had at the season, was because I was able to avoid a 33% Collin Morikawa that took out a ton of lineups. And then Ludvig and Hideki, again, obviously both good starts to the season, right? Hideki wins Century and backs it up with the 16th at Sony. Irons looked phenomenal. Putter looked phenomenal for Hideki. And then Ludvig kind of shot up the leaderboard to finish top 5 at the Century. Now, ever since Ludvig originally broke onto the scene, I have been saying Ludvig is going to win at either Torrey Pines or Bay Hill. Okay. Those to me are the 2 golf courses that really accentuate what he does best, his elite driving ability, his ability to start on second base at an event like this because of the way that he drives the ball. Now, the only reason why I did not bet Ludvig last year was because I said to myself, okay, I just want to see it one time on POA. And he putted well. He missed some short putt. He gained strokes putting, okay, but he still missed enough putts on POA to not win the golf tournament. Like, I remember watching him and tracking him last year, and overall in the week, he putted above field average, but he still missed. He hit the ball well enough to nearly win and still missed just enough putts to finish 9th instead of, 3rd, right? Then he follows it up the next week with a phenomenal POA putting performance on Pebble, right? So I think we can say under a limited sample size, Ludvig can putt well enough on POA to win this type of golf tournament. And I think that's probably my pick to win as we sit here on Sunday morning.
Okay.
There's gonna be a lot of Zalatoris love, depending on what he does today. I think Ludvig's gonna be extremely popular too. I'm not the only it's not a hot take to look at Ludvig's skill set and say Torrey Pine should make a ton of sense. And I think he's going to probably catch some steam on Monday morning. But that would most likely be my first bet that I make on Monday morning when odds drop. Is I would really love. Do you think it's overly ambitious asking for an 18-1 on Ludvig? I think Morikawa and Hideki are going to be 10-12. It's probably 16, right?
I think that's ambitious. I think
it's 14.
Yeah. I was thinking 14 or 15.
Is it won anything but the RSM Classic? You think?
Yeah, but everyone, these books are they have a good pulse now of what we like.
Yeah, Kyle says Ludvig 14, huh? You're probably right.
They know that everybody is smashing Ludvig with 18 or 20. Because then you can still fit a couple guys down the card at that point,
you're right.
Where you can you don't have to go all in.
Well, as long as I can fit Bramlett with my Ludvig 14, I'll be happy.
I think you will be able to. No, I think they're going to make these books are going to make you make a decision. Do you basically want to put all your eggs in the outright basket with Ludvig this week? So one thing I want to say about Ludvig though is we have a little bit of feel like a Hovland situation where the big deficiency with Ludvig is around the green play. And he's been pretty atrocious in that area. But
correct.
We make this case for Hovland in these types of places because when it comes to chipping out a rough, sometimes there's a bit of luck involved, and it's really just sliding the ball underneath the ball out of the rough and just popping it up and kind of hoping that it gets kind of close to the hole at that point. And you could make the argument that you could have Ludvig doing that here. So, I mean, if they make a mistake and we get a great number, yes, I would be betting Ludvig. I don't think we will be getting that. So it probably will be, are you going to essentially single bullet Ludvig this week if you have that strong conviction? And if you do, then do it. So, and it would fit too. I mean, we saw Rahm get his breakthrough win here. That would fit for Ludvig as far as like the type of guy to win at Torrey Pines, get the big boy win to kind of propel his career at that point. Like, obviously we golf sickos think he's great, but Ludvig hasn't really broken to the mainstream yet. This would be one reason to do it. So
yeah. Hell yeah, Sal, by the way. My guy Sal already Ludvig Bramlett card done. We are absolutely cooking.
There you go. I want to say one thing about Colin before we move on.
Well, that was going to be my thing.
Okay.
I was going to ask you 3 kind of rapid fire questions to finish off. And the first rapid fire question was, talk me through Colin versus Hideki at this golf course.
Okay. So one of the things I noticed in the GCSAA report was, and you made mention how wet it was last year, the atmospheric river. Well, they went out of their way in their notes to say how dry it was.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I'm a little concerned about is, let's say these fairways are kind of bouncy.
Yeah.
They're pretty narrow. I don't really know if I want to play Morikawa at a long iron golf course where he's spending more time in the rough than he is in the fairway. Like, he would have to have just an unreal driving week, but with firmer fairways, that's going to make it a lot difficult, because if he's just a little bit offline, it doesn't take a whole lot to just scoot that ball in the rough there. And I feel like at that point, his strengths from that area is just completely neutralized. Then.
Can I give you a dirty little secret though? I don't think Hideki's longer than Colin.
No, he isn't. That was just kind of like that probably might be a case against Hideki at that point too.
Against both of them, maybe maybe pro the Ludvig Bramlett card.
Yeah, that makes me think if this is going to be more firmer fairways where balls just
I agree with you, by the way.
Then it just becomes just pick the guys who hit the farthest, because no one's going to hit the fairway. If it's going to be 50% driving accuracy rates, like at that point,
okay,
especially on the longer holes, just pick the farthest guy.
Yeah. Okay. My second rapid fire question for you is, if I gave you, and I'm going to add one more guy in here, two more guys in here that are sitting just outside of the top 20. But if I gave you Homa, McNeely, Zalatoris, Keegan, and Sahith, okay, which I expect to be the 28 to 40 range, you come back with.
Okay, well, maybe this is a good transition to my next slide. So
yeah, you can bring up yours if you want, and we can toggle back and forth.
So it's not mine. This is an average
of
our two rankings. And then I have notable differences down here.
Interesting.
So one of the things that we came up with differently is your Homa ranking. Is your number 8. You are buying just the player, him, coming to this place.
The putter, the course history, the comp course history. I am.
Yeah. Which I'm more still waiting. Like, obviously, the fact that Homa is number 22 in my model has a lot of course history and West Coast experience here. But let's just be frank. His stats have not been very good for the last probably 10 months at this point. So
except Century. Like, Century was good ball striking.
Was it? I know if you adjust it to strength of field, but he barely gained over the field in his irons.
Yeah.
So
he was above.
He still finished what, 26th? So
I know there's 26. Yeah.
It's been better. I will give you that. Like at Nedbank, he showed some flashes. He was, I think, first round leader there in South Africa, definitely tailed over the weekend, but overall the stats look pretty good on him. He was middle of the road at Century, was mostly with the putter. I will give you that. I'm not outright fade on Max, but I would need him to be discounted, I think.
Yeah. You're still more in prove it mode. No, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. My bar on him is probably too low in terms of like what I saw at the Century was such a market improvement over some of the other stuff earlier in the year that I'm probably overrating how back that he might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, obviously he's great here, but I don't think we're going to get a discount on him. I think kind of like we talked about with Ludvig, I think there's look, it's Max Homa, Torrey Pines. He's a past champion. Our community's in the know that, hey, he's been hitting the ball a little better. Like he's not going to be more than 30 to 1 to win this tournament. He's probably going to be, I would say 25 or 28 just because his name is Max Homa and he's playing at Torrey Pines. So he's probably going to be upper 9,000s, mid 9,000s in DK. He's going to draw probably some ownership. You're not fooling anybody. It's like, where's the opportunity to take Max this week? So, but I if you are having faith in just him on the West Coast, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe we do get a little bit of a discount in the betting market. I think I might be like, all right, I'm willing to just take blind faith at that point. I don't think we're going to get it though.
But you're more of a Zalatoris Keegan guy this week, it appears.
Yeah. Well, so funny enough, the reason why he's number 8 in the composite is because there's guys that you're higher on that I'm just lower on. Like, for example, Joseph Bramlett's 28 in my model. All right. That kind of evens out a little bit. We actually had the same exact
disrespect.
Yeah. For Joseph Bramlett, disrespecting him a
Who,
top 30.
by the way, I should say, did not qualify for the PGA Tour this year. Like he just objectively failed at Q school. He is like not a PGA Tour golfer.
Exactly. We actually had the same Zalatoris rank. We're both at 11. So he just in the composite average, he just appears higher.
Yeah.
So
I think he is a Monday morning Twitter click. By the way,
absolutely.
I think the only thing that Zalatoris can do that will make him not a Monday morning click is he either needs to win or shoot 80.
Yes, I would agree. Like
anything in between
publicly today.
Yeah, anything in between, and people are going to be lining up to bet Zalatoris next week.
Yeah,
which I don't disagree with. Like I'm with you guys.
Yeah, but again, I don't think we're going to discount on him either.
No.
They know these guys. These guys are popular chalky names. We are not getting we're not getting the 55 on Zalatoris that we got last week. We are going to get probably closer to, I think, around where Homa is going to be, probably 28 to 30.
I think that he opens at 30 and gets bet down to 25.
Probably. I would say that too. So, I'm interested in Keegan this week. I'm a lot higher on the mile. It's more recent form, and just the ball striking, I think, has been a little better over that stretch of time I'm looking at. Hit the ball great at Sony, hit it well at Century. He's got that runner finish a couple of years ago here. I know that my co-host is going to love my model more than your model on Keegan this week because I'm so high on him. But I think Keegan probably, I don't know if we're outright, but I think he's going to keep it rolling. Although there's the little voice in my head that Capper is 100% right on this. This is why he's so valuable, that when Keegan is really chalky, he does not live up to it. And he's probably going to be chalky, I feel like, this week after two good finishes over in Hawaii coming to this course. Maybe we'll see. Somebody mentioned, though, Akshay in the any interest on him. So he's overplaying in the Middle East right now. You have him a lot lower than I do. I have him number 20 on my model. You have him number 35. Akshay's not, I know he's a twig, but I thought his driving distance numbers were a little higher than what they actually are. He does not hit it as far. Mm-hmm. His iron play has been really sporadic as well. So it might be just kind of maybe the course condition models I have on him, just those inputs, what tournaments it's selecting, pushing up, but I'm not quite as high on Akshay than I think the model suggests.
Yeah.
So what about you? Obviously he's lower than me. So what do you have any overarching takes?
I don't have a strong opinion on Akshay this week. He finished he's not going to be a bat for me. He finished 13th at this event last year, so he did certainly play well. But I agree. I don't think that the ball striking with Akshay is quite what people think the ball striking. For example, if he is in the same range as Aaron Rye, Taylor Pendrith, Daniel Berger, Thomas Dietrich, Jason Day, these are all guys that I prefer to Akshay this week.
I think I would agree with you on that one too. I think I'd rather have all. Well, Berger has burned me a lot. Can't spell burger without burn or burr, whatever. Bad joke. But I would probably agree with you on all those guys. The other guy, notice as well, you're not high on Steven Yeager. Top 5 finish last year.
Yeah.
Coming off a good finish at Sony. 42 versus 16 in my model. I don't know why. What do you think maybe caused that in your model? Sometimes this stuff is weird and just what we're picking.
Yeah.
And there's guys that were higher on that we just I don't like that. Or there's guys that were a lot lower on. Hey, why is he so low? Maybe I got to look at it. What do you think maybe drove you not liking Yeager this week?
The iron numbers were not what I wanted them to be. Now his irons look quite good at Sony. So maybe you want to put more stock into the recent 2025 form. I had Yeager last year. Yeager was a key piece on both my outright card and in my almost winning DFS lineup. And had he won, I would have won the $100 single entry. Mm-hmm. And he obviously didn't win. So, I think the golf course fit makes a lot of sense, right? I think there's a golf course where he can bomb away off the tee with reckless abandon and he hit the ball extremely well here last year. Did not putt well. Was one of the leaders in tee to green. So it's a good set for him. I think Taylor Pendrith market corrects him in a way. Like I think Taylor Pendrith is doing everything that Jaeger is doing, but a better putter, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
a
would.
better short game right now.
Yep. Yeah. I would agree. The one thing with the Jaeger's iron numbers, there was a stretch, I think in the summer last year, he was just abysmal. So that
Yep.
definitely, I think, is
Mm-hmm.
dragging that down. But beginning of year, he was relatively okay, I think. So what do you believe? Like, did he fix the irons? Because he hit the ball pretty good at Sony. So, we'll see about that. But I agree with the course fit. I think he's a little better. And that's probably why just some of the condition models I use, because I go pretty crazy with this stuff.
Yeah.
Probably a little higher. Then the only other guy I want to highlight, I don't want to talk about Lee Hodges, to be honest. I know you're a little higher on him. I don't want to talk about
Whatever.
him. Grazerman, your nemesis, I feel like. Your fade this week at Amex, again, just
he's playing
disrespecting
well.
him. He is playing pretty well. Well, I think we can talk about why he might be playing pretty well. I was a little higher on Grazerman last week than you were, but 74 in your model this week. I have him at 36. I know why he's 36 in my model, and I think I know why he's 74 in your model, but why don't you talk about why you just continue to hate Max Grazerman just in all facets of the game?
Well, no real POA experience, below average short game, below average recent approach form, below average long-term middle form. He murders the ball off the tee. I'll give you that. That's the strongest redeeming quality. Virtually zero golf course history at Torrey Pines or in California or long, difficult golf courses or any of the big four golf courses. So while we'd like his skill set on paper, and again, he's a young guy, right? So I don't tend to put as much stock into that as I would if he was like an experienced PGA Tour veteran who we just have this large sample size of not playing well at any of these golf courses. It's more of like, well, he hasn't really gotten much of an opportunity yet. So that would be additional context I would throw in there where I don't think he should be penalized as heavily as the model is. But yeah, there's just certain guys that my numbers are just consistently like, I don't think this guy is as good as the market thinks he is. And there's certain guys on the opposite end of the spectrum where my numbers are just consistently like Aaron Rye, for example, is a guy that my numbers have always loved. My numbers loved Aaron Rye all last year. And I was on Aaron Rye a ton. And then, thank God he won the Wyndham to make all of those outright bets worth it for us. Grazerman's just a guy my numbers are lower on consistently than market. I don't think he's very good.
I mean, his irons are complete garbage. Like he's like, I think we want to think of him like, I can see someone spinning themselves of, oh, well, he's got some Jason Day qualities. Jason Day was all length. His irons are kind of mediocre, man, whatever, but great putter. But like we just mentioned, though, he did not play at all in the California swing. I don't know if he was injured. I know he had a withdrawal around that time, so maybe he was battling something, but didn't. So there's no POA history. And I think just why he's playing well at Amex is you had two golf courses in that rotation that are ridiculously easy, probably a little closer to what he was dominating last fall than what he's, going to see at Torrey Pines. And I feel like just at this type of golf course where, yes, he's got the cheat code with distance. Yes, he's a good putter on paper, but this might be an example of a guy that just because you're a good putter on paper, you might not be all that great on the surface. So, I know why he's higher in this model because distance, and there's probably some more off the tee course condition stuff that probably favors more distance. So he might show well in. Obviously, the putting that probably is there too. But I have reservations as well. I was higher on him last week, this week technically at Amex. This might be a cold dose of reality for Mr. Grazerman at Torrey Pines.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap up. We've done an hour 20. Give us anyone else you want to talk about. For me, I am targeting Ludvig on Monday morning, and I'm probably going to need to think on Zalatoris, Pendrith, Rye. I probably like Finau more than you in the outright market. Yeah, Finau, Rye, Zalatoris, Pendrith are kind of the guys I'm thinking about as my Ludvig complement this week, and obviously Joey Brams is a given. But finish up with me. Any guy you think deserves some love that we didn't touch on?
I mean, honestly, I think we kind of touched on all that. I think so. Vegas burned you pretty bad at
Yeah.
Amex. This might be one of the guys that maybe you want to consider.
Oh yeah, I'll go back to Vegas.
Again. Okay,
Yeah,
all right. Well,
yeah.
that was another guy I noticed was
Yeah.
a lot lower in your model. Like I have a 13 in my model, and it's obviously distance, long iron play, like tee to green stuff, like difficult conditions.
Yeah.
Like that's for me. Like his results here aren't the strongest that I would like, but I feel like just what he kind of has been doing over the last like 12 months or so, that should translate well here. So theoretically, so I think Vegas probably is somebody I'm willing to forgive this week again. And maybe just because he was so bad at Amex, maybe we get a little bit of a discount in DFS and positional market. That's probably someone I'm looking to maybe put on my card again this week.
Sweet. I don't have anything else, Steve. Any closing thoughts before we get out of here? Who's your official pick to win on Sunday? I'm going with Ludvig.
Oh, Sunday at Torrey?
Yeah, well, just in terms of as we sit here on Sunday morning before the odds come out, who's your guy? Who's holding the trophy on Sunday? I'm saying this is the Ludvig breakthrough.
I mean, I'm gonna spin myself away from this because this is what I do, but I probably Ludvig is like that easy like gun to your head pick.
Yeah,
without really diving too like completely headfirst into this. Yeah, it'd probably be Ludvig.
Yeah, probably pretty popular, I would imagine.
Yes, it's gonna be very popular. Him and Zalatoris, I would say, is probably the two most popular bets on the board this week.
I'm sure that'll work out beautifully for all of us. Well, Steve, thanks for doing this for me on this Sunday morning. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. I far more enjoy having you to bounce things off of than the 45 minutes monotonous slog of talking about these things solo. So hopefully if people enjoyed this live show, let us know and we could maybe do more of them in the future, hopefully with Boston Capper as well next time. As I mentioned, or I didn't mention, I don't think I did an ad read or anything like that, which is okay now. We've kind of hit our cruising altitude at Inside Sports. I don't need to talk it up every single week. But if you want more of this, but essentially complete 24/7 access to Steve and I all the time and be a part of these conversations 24/7 with a bunch of other super, super sharp people in that Discord as well, including we have just somehow turned into like the best tennis Discord. I don't know how much competition there is for that. Like, I don't know how many other places are devoting the effort that we are into the Australian Open, but there are a lot of added benefits outside of the golf operations to join Inside Sports Network. Our football channel is more active than our golf channel, which is wild because our golf channel is 24/7 nonstop. And by the way, if you're the type of person where it's like, sounds great, kind of intimidating. Like I honestly don't want to compete with a bunch of messages in the Discord all day. Well, I think the beauty of it is our website where you can just get everything that you want for a given week without even joining. I mean, the Discord is obviously where the magic happens, but you can get everything that you paid for and then some just by looking at the content that we have on the website outside of the Discord, the insider sheets, the course previews, the articles, the insider picks as well too, the staff picks. We have like a team of 13 people where we put up our picks for every single event in terms of a number of different categories. And then obviously, like I mentioned, the Discord is really, I think, the thing that I would say that I'm most proud of in terms of the level of insight, right? Like, I think it's phenomenal if you're a beginner and you're just starting to dip your like I just started betting tennis this year based on the Discord, and am doing quite well. As I know a number of other members are. Shout out Rishi. So I think there's kind of something for everyone. If you just want to like learn and ask other smart people questions, then this is the best place for you. And if you're already consider yourself a sharp better who has a lot of context and are just looking to take it to the next level and find a like-minded group of people, you're not, it's the best hang in town, man. I don't think you can truly find anything like it. And I'm super, super proud of what we've created. Large thanks to people like you. So that will do it from us. We will be back on this podcast feed tomorrow. Bunch of shows. You'll be back tomorrow. Brian will have a show tomorrow. I will have a show tomorrow as well with Ron Kloss from BetSperts. And enjoy the football today. Good luck with your bets. We'll see you next time.